friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 2 of my 2020 Valentine card series. Today I'm going to be using the set Flamingo Together and also Critters in the Jungle. So I've stamped out all the images I'll be using on some Nina Solar White cardstock with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copics. I'm starting with my male flamingo, and for him I'm using R21, R22, and R24. I wanted kind of a peachy pink, so these are a good red combo for that. So I'm starting with that R24 and laying in some shadows under his wings, around his neck, under his head, and a little bit to accentuate that wing as well. And then I'm going to blend that out with the R22, so that'll be my mid-tone. And then I will bring in R21 as my highlight shade, so I'll fill in the rest of his face, and then also along the inside of his neck and the area on the top of his wing. Now I thought that this wasn't quite enough contrast for me, so I am going to go back in and do a double layer of that R24 and then blend that out once again, just to kind of reinforce the contrast. Then for the female flamingo, I decided to make her just a shade lighter, so I took away the R24 and added in the R20. So the R22 is going to be my darkest shade now, and I'm coloring her in pretty much the same way as the male flamingo, just in the opposite direction. So the R21 is my mid-tone, and then I will fill in everything that remains with that R20 for the highlight. So as I did with the male flamingo, I am going to go in and just beef up that contrast. You can see she looks pretty flat right now, so I'm going to add a little more of that R22 in the areas that I want to be darkest, and then blend that out once again with the R21. For their beaks, I'm going to start with C5 and C7 on the lower part. I'm using that C7 down at the tip, and then I'm going to blend that up just a little bit more with that C5. And then I decided that I would take a pink marker, so I'm going back to that R20, and I'm going to do just a quick line on the bottom half of the beak, just to add a little bit of color there as well. I'm moving on to some of my foliage, and I'm going to start with the smaller tropical leaf from Critters in the Jungle, and I'm using YG00, YG01, and YG03 to color those. I wanted it to be something really bright and fresh looking, so I thought this would be a good combination. I am going to go back once again with a little more of that YG03 and just deepen up the darkest color, and then blend again with my mid-tone and a little bit with that highlight color as well. Then for the larger leaf, I'm going to use YG03, YG05, and YG07. Just coloring it the same way, concentrating the darkest color towards the bottom of the leaf and also in the center of the leaf where that line is drawn, and then blending with the mid-tone towards the center and then the highlight at the tip, and then going back and adding a little more contrast with those darker colors once again. Then I'll switch things up and use some darker greens for the tropical plant at the bottom right. I'm going to use YG61, YG63, and YG67 for that. I'm using that darkest shade, the YG67, toward the inside of each leaf, but I am leaving just a tiny sliver so that I can add a little bit of highlight, and that is just so that they don't look like, you know, one big blob. Having a little bit of a highlight in between each leaf is going to just kind of lift it. So you can see that I'm using my highlight shade now and just filling in that little side area that I left, and then bringing that color down toward the tip. Once I have everything filled in, I'll go back again with that YG67 and add a few more streaks of that darker color to really up that contrast and just give it some more life. This is a step that you could skip if you want to, but I just think it adds so much more. You can really see the difference between that first and second layer that's added to those images. So I'll just add that and blend a little bit out. I'm not going to go all the way back down again because I don't want to lose that lighter area. Then I'll move on to the little grasses, and those are from the Manatee-rific stamp set, which I showed at the beginning, but I think I forgot to mention. But yeah, I just stamped out a couple of those, and I'm using YG24 and YG28 to add a little color to those. They're pretty narrow, so just the 2 colors will do, but of course I did go back in with that YG28 and add some depth. And then for the flowers, I'm going to use Y13, Y15, and Y17 for the centers of the larger flower. And then for the smaller flowers, I'm going to color them in completely with those yellows. For the larger flower, I'm going to take BG10 and just add a little shading on the petals so that they look white. And then I trim these out with the matching dies. For my focal panel, I've die cut some ballet slippers cardstock using the Stitch Journaling card die, and I'm going to stamp the word flamingo from my sentiment in Wild Rose ink. So I will ink that up and smooth that down, and then ink it up a second time to make sure that I have a really good impression, since this ink does dry back a little bit. And then I will line up the rest of my sentiment and stamp that with Memento Tuxedo Black. So it says, "We flamingo together." And I did stamp that down twice again since those words were so small, just to make sure they were nice and bold. So I'll set that aside and pop my card base in my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp on the inside of my card. I'm using the sentiment that says, "I'll stand by you," and then the 2 palm tree images. And the bases and tops of the palm trees are separate, and they were going to be overlapping just a bit, so I just had to do them all separately, but it was real quick and easy to do. Then I'm going to take the 2 smallest of the Just Stitching Hearts die set, and I'm going to tape those in place right under the sentiment on my focal panel, and that is just going to leave that impression of the stitching lines. It doesn't cut anything out, but it'll give a nice backdrop for my flamingos in love. So now I can grab my images and begin to adhere those to the card, and I'm going to start with this larger plant and add that right down in the center. Then I'll take the 2 larger leaves, and those will go on each side. So I'm doing a pretty symmetrical design on this one. I just thought since the flamingos are facing each other, it kind of went with this card. Then I'll do the 2 small leaves kind of poking out the top, tucked in behind that tropical plant. And then I will take my little grasses from the Manatee-rific, and I will adhere those kind of sticking out the sides, just so I have like a nice full little tropical area there for my flamingos to stand in. So I did one on the far right and one on the far left, and then I'm going to take the 3rd one and stick it in the center, and then I can grab my male flamingo, and I'm going to add some glue to the back of him and just tuck him so that he is standing amidst all that foliage. And then the female I'm going to grab quickly while he's still wet so that I can adhere her as well, and that way if I need to adjust them at all, I can move them both together. So then I just have my couple little flowers. So I have one on the left, and I'll do another one on the right. And just so things aren't perfectly symmetrical, I'm going to add a second little one over on the right hand side, and also one to the female flamingo's head. So I just thought that that would add something really sweet there and just give a nice pop of yellow that brings your eye up towards the top of the focal panel. So my pattern papers are from the Spring Fling collection, and I die cut both of them with the outside in stitch rectangle stackables. So I am going to add those to my card, and that gives you the nice stitching detail, but also leaves a little bit of that pink cardstock showing through on the sides. And then this little plus print is going to go right over top in the center. I've added some foam tape to the back of my focal panel, so I'll just peel off those release papers and make sure that I'm lining that up nice and straight, and then press that down into place. To finish up my card, I'm going to grab some crystal stickles and just fill in the centers of each of those flowers to add a tiny pop of glitter. And lift that up to the camera so you can see how that catches the light and give you another peek at the inside. And that is going to complete my card for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, you can hit that notification bell if you want to be sure that my videos always end up in your feed. If you'd like to keep watching, here's 2 extra videos that I thought you might also be interested in, so you can check either of those out. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.